challenge yourself constantly.
You have to be a little bit patient.
The whole idea is you have to become content in singleness.
I'd be lying if I said I haven't fired off some Instagram DMs.
The word dating is not mentioned in the Bible.
I dedicated my life at Tomorrow World to Jesus.
Welcome to the Single Man Podcast, where we delve into candid conversations with Christian men about their journey to faith, advice for their younger selves, and navigating dating. With a heart to reach men from all walks of life, dive into real stories of redemption, growth, and the hope found in following Jesus. I'm your host, Carlton French, a 29-year-old single Christian, and I'm excited for you to listen to this week's episode. Let's jump into it. Let's say you could go back and talk to like your younger self when you were high school, college, kind of like trying to figure things out. Like you said, you're paying for kind of the actions then, now even. What if you could somehow go back and talk to younger Billy? What would you tell him to try to avoid some of these consequences you're facing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, first of all, without being able to change the church that I go to with just what I've been given.
Yeah.
I did have an opportunity, and there's one of my closest friends in high school that was a strong believer and didn't go to the parties, didn't do anything, like really was a believer. Everybody knew he was a believer, so they weren't invited him to parties because of that.
Yeah.
But I cared so much about my reputation, about people's perspective of me, about my popularity. In a small town, popularity is a big deal. If you're popular, you can get away with anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was my popularity goal, was just to be known by everybody. I never saw my consequences of my actions, of all the hurts I've caused, until I started growing closer to Christ. And it wasn't like it was consequence every time. I'm not going to call it consequence every time. Like it's not always consequence. It's just things, habits or ways that I handle things. Like that's what kind of was brought out during my me walking closer to Christ, and also dating and stuff. And so being more seriously dating, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say this, like the closer you grow to Christ, the more sin that's going to be exposed, right?
Yeah.
And so the closer you grow to Christ, the more sin that's going to be exposed. And so while I've been trying to grow closer to Christ, there's been more and more things that have came out like, oh man, I did not know I dealt with that, or I'd had this. So there's a lot of things that I had to process and figure out, and really like examine, like, hey, where's this coming from? So through counseling and through mentors, like I was able to really go back to the root of it. And it came back to my dad. So right now, like if you would ask me 2 years ago why that stuff happens, I still would have been like, I'm just angry. I just feel like I'm just angry because someone made me mad, right? Or like there's just something, I just feel like things out of control. I didn't know why this was, like where all this is rooted from, right? And so one of the things, words or things that I go by is like, or I've heard that was really impactful for me, was sins left untouched lead to addiction, and then hurts left untouched lead to anger. And so those are two phrases that I'm like, dude, that's really impactful. One for the sexual addiction, and one for my anger. My counselor, she had a list of emotions like happy, mad, angry, sad, whatever. And she was like, how many on that list are good feelings, good emotions? And I was like, only the happy. Happy and glad, I think it was. She's like, well, how about all of them? And I was like, no, that's not true. Angry's not a good one. Mad's not a good one. Like upset, sad.
Yeah.
How's that a good one? She's like, no, it's good emotions. Emotions aren't the bad part. Like that's not the bad.
Action.
It's the action behind it, right? And so she was like, all those emotions are a check engine light. So it's a check engine light. So if you react in anger, that's a check engine light. I mean, I lost a lot. Like I lost a job. I lost friends. My community group kind of fell apart, things like that. And so I felt like I had no one in that moment. And so there's a scripture that really helped me through this.
Yeah.
And it's Psalms 34. So Psalms 34. Here we go.
What verse is it?
Psalms 34, verse 6. So this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all of his troubles. This Psalms 34, we went through it, and my mentor and I and a lot of the people I was going through hardship with, right?
Yeah.
And hearing that, I was like, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and the Lord saved him out of all of his troubles. Like, I had to understand that when I lost everything, I'm now a poor man. Like, I felt like I really did lose my dream job. I lost friends. Like, felt like a lot of things whenever I had that last encounter with my wife, the last thing with her of just crossing that line. And so I was in a rough spot, and I just felt stripped away from everything, right? I'd say, like, this last year, I looked back and just I was able to like just look back at how much God answered this prayer. I mean, and I didn't realize it was because of how poor I was. Like, I was poor. I didn't have all the things I wanted. The things that I thought were good, that I wanted, that I desired, like, were stripped away, right? And I was a poor man.
Yeah.
And I was crying out. I mean, I was literally crying out. And so through processing my dad's hurts, through talking to counselors, through talking to mentor, and then through the love and patience of my wife, who cared for me so well in that time, in that season, and stayed patient and loved me. And she quoted a verse for me in 1 Peter.
Yeah.
And
1 Peter 3.
1 Peter 3. In 1 Peter 3, and it basically talks about how the silence of a woman, like, and the prayer. I don't want to butcher it, but
Yeah, pull it up. Yeah.
pull it up. I'm going to pull it up, but
Get the word out.
actually I have it on my phone. Let's see. Okay, likewise, this is 1 Peter 3, verse 1. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. And so my wife, like, lived that out. She didn't try to preach to me. She didn't try to tell me what's true and what I'm doing wrong or anything like that. She was just patient and quiet and praying without me knowing. And so for this past year and a half, like, it's just been a healing season for sure. But man, I have been able to see, like, I've been able to grow a love for my wife that, like, I know only God can do, and just an appreciation for her. And man, I found me a good wife. I mean, I found me a Proverbs 31 wife, and can't tell you how important that is in seasons like this when we screw up or we do things that we didn't know we're still struggling with, right, in marriage. And so, man, I found my bride, and my bride has been my best teammate in the world.
I think that'll hopefully be even encouraging to women that listen too,
Yeah.
Like, to really, like, contend for your husband or your future husband in prayer. And it changed you, You're, like, crying here.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the crazy thing is I didn't know that.
Right.
I didn't know that until we talked about it this last June. My birthday this last year, when I was sharing with her the things I've learned and all the things, like, we were talking together, she shared that with me, and man, it just got me. I was just like, that's crazy. But because of the fact that she believed what Scripture says and what Jesus says, like, she trusted that.
Yeah.
And she went with that, and she just prayed without me knowing, without anybody knowing. Like, she just prayed for me, and for her, it was even more impactful because of the fact that she gets to see an answered prayer.
Yeah.
Of just because our conversation, our conflict is way different. We learned our conflict ways. Like, when we first got married, our conflict was very off. I'm very escalate, she's very escalate, and it just never went well, right? And so now I feel like our conflict has changed a lot, and that's just because of dealing with past hurts.
Yeah.
That's literally all it took was just me dealing with the past hurts to have more patience, more understanding, and more love and care for my wife.